Right, okay, so the end of DEI and how black professionals can still get ahead despite corporate backlash. It is definitely a big topic right now, okay? So ladies and gentlemen, I would love you guys to give a round of applause. Now wait till I've said everybody's name as well to give them all a round of applause before you stop. All right, so start the round of applause, please. Make some noise for Fidel Fatudu, Naomi Assi, Robert Clark, and host Pav Wackham. Give them a round of applause, please.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome everybody. I'm Pav Wakeham and I head up the strategic operations team for the Investec real estate business. Let me start by introducing our three panellists. We've got Naomi Assi, we've got Robert Clark and we've got Fidel Fadu here. Today is all about our panellists and their experience with DEI. But before we get into the conversation, I'd like to give you a quick overview of Investec's position on DE&I. Firstly, at Investec, we call it belonging, diversity and inclusion bid, because we want everyone to feel like that they can be themselves at work. I mean, it's nothing more energy consuming than trying to be something that you're not, so it's really important. Our group CEO, Fani Titi, has doubled down on our commitment and regularly reiterates our position at events, at town halls, and any other chance he gets a chance to speak. We hold ourselves to account by setting targets and tracking our progress. We have a number of bid policies and initiatives to support our approach. You can see all the zebras. We've got a table outside, so please do come and talk to us if you want to know anything else about our policies and initiatives. But now let's get into the crux of the conversation and hear from our panellists. I could introduce them as a trio of highly experienced banking professionals, because they all are. However, I prefer to say that on stage with me today is a former member of Marvel Cinematic Universe, a former music industry exec. So let me start with you, Robert. Tell us about your superhero background.
Thanks, Pav. Pleasure to be here today, everyone. And thank you very much to the BYP team for having us. Good afternoon. So I'm Robert Clark, and as Pav mentioned, have a slightly unusual and unconventional kind of background coming into banking. For the first 2 years of my career, I worked on a film set for Marvel, which was unusual, but an amazing experience. I think one of the more memorable moments was being shouted at by Benedict Cumberbatch whilst he was dressed as a zombie. Which, one unforgettable experience for sure. But, I always wanted to work in the city and managed to land myself at Investec, where I work in the consumer M&A team, so providing corporate finance advice for corporate businesses and also private equity clients. So I've been at Investec for 3 years. So that's a little bit on me.
Cool, thank you. I'm sure you bring some of that cinematic experience to Investec, I'm sure. Naomi, tell us a bit about your professional career.
Thanks, Pav. And hi, everyone. It's lovely to be here and lovely to meet you all. I've been at Investec for, coming up to 9 years now. And my roles have predominantly been within the private banking space. So I've done a variety of different roles. Currently, I'm a private banker looking after high net worth individuals. And I guess my day-to-day predominantly consists of me finding solutions for my clients' banking, lending, foreign exchange, and wealth management needs. So keeps me busy, but I like what I do. And outside of that, I'm part of the multicultural network at Investec. So again, I'm very happy to be here and looking forward to answering some of these questions.
Awesome, thank you. And Fidel, you must be the former music artist. Tell us your story.
Yes, actually, when I left uni, the plan was to go into music full time. And the girlfriend I had at the time didn't really agree. So she was like, when you just apply to this job in the city, I ended up getting it. And then was, working in the city all the way through. But I think along that journey, I had the opportunity to go into music full time. Took it, was an artist for 3 years, and then, now at Investec, and I'm going into my 3rd year here.
I'm surprised it was your girlfriend and not your mum.
My mum was actually really supportive. Like, I think she liked the idea of music.
Cool. No, just moving into the sort of bulk of the conversation. So there's lots of, we've all heard lots of companies reversing on their policies, their DEI and bid policies. So Fidel, actually, sticking with you, how have you seen this play out in the financial services or, even at Investec?
Sorry, could you...
Yeah,
could you
sure.
just repeat that?
So how have you seen, so the sort of backlash with companies retrenching from bid policies and DE&I, how have you seen this play out in the industry or just at Investec?
Yeah, so I think in a few different ways. At Investec, and I think probably in the UK as a whole, it's been more of a change of language. It's a bit more subtle. So I think before we would have had seen things like DEI on websites, that sort of stuff. I think now it's more so, just speaking about belonging, inclusion, diversity, that sort of stuff. So I think it's a subtle language shift that we've seen here. I suppose one of the key messages that I kind of wanted to almost get across is that political landscapes can change. You can get regime changes over in the US, etc. And clearly they affect what goes on in the UK. But I think that me personally, I just never have focused on that. It's always, for me, I've always kind of focused on how can I be the best version of myself, and I think that's helped. I think also that said, if you look at the fact that we're here today, the fact that we've got organisations like BYP that are organising the events, the fact that they're allying with the likes of Investec, I just think it just shows that there are a lot of corporates out there that are actually doubling down and supporting us.
Yeah, I agree. So Robert, what's your experience been to date?
I think my experience at Investec of D&I has been really positive. I think inherently as a firm, given our African heritage, I think it is something that's very much ingrained in our culture. Our CEO, Fani Titi, is obviously a black man, and I think having those types of individuals, those role models in senior positions, is something that really resonated with me when I was applying to the firm. And I think I wouldn't say it's something that's unique, but I think it's definitely a key standout for me. But that said, within the sphere in which I work in corporate finance, I think it is still very much black people are very much underrepresented, especially in senior positions. I think clearly there's still a long way to go, but I think initiatives like this are fantastic in terms of trying to move the dial in that regard.
I also just think it's really important just to keep the conversation going and making sure that these initiatives stay at the forefront. It is an ongoing process. Let's sort of talk more about your individual experiences. So Fidel, do you think as a black professional you face unique challenges? Can you share some of your perspectives?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like certainly in my career I've faced unique challenges, and I think any black person will face unique challenges in the corporate world, outside of the corporate world, etc. I go back to some stories and actually speaking about some of those challenges. So like we're talking about bias, being overlooked. You can be the best performer in the room and sometimes still be overlooked as well. So there's a lot that I think black people have to navigate and that we have to navigate. I think that said, there's I don't know, I almost feel for myself anyway. There have been a lot of stories that I've kind of had to go through. So one particular was an early firm that I was at. I was asked to anglicise my name. So from Fidel Fatidou to Frederick Foster. It's a pretty wild name. But yeah, the whole, just having to navigate that in itself, I think is quite a lot. Luckily, one of the other senior leaders there was like, don't change your name, it actually makes you stand out. And that was probably my first lesson, certainly in the corporate world, of realizing that actually being yourself, standing out, that can be your advantage. And I think I'll come on to that a bit more when we go into like mentors and that sort of stuff. But yeah.
No, you make there's some points there that may resonate with our audience. I did hear some murmurs there. I genuinely think the message there is, be true to yourself, don't erase yourself, use your uniqueness to your advantage. Culture is so important, and it's an important aspect at work. It's one of the reasons why I chose to come back to Investec 3.5 years ago, because the culture at Investec really does embrace our uniqueness. Naomi, let's go over to you. You recently moved internally at Investec. I guess it's important to trust your skill set and be ambitious.
Yeah. 100%. I think it's super important to keep those things at the forefront of your mind and how you present yourself at work. I think the current climate, it sort of forces us to go back to basics. And when I say go back to basics, I mean just remember who you are as a professional, remember what skills you bring to the table, and also remember to keep the momentum going to keep your career on a positive trajectory. When I think about myself personally, what was key for me was just to trust the skills that I had, I guess, learn and bought along the way throughout my career. And when I think about those skills, they were both sort of technical skills that would actually allow me to do the job, but also the softer skills that are often overlooked. So for me, what was really important was like relationship building, learning how to speak to high net worth individuals, learning how to have difficult conversations with high net worth individuals. Those were things that were mine and were instilled within me. So when I'm going for different roles within the business, regardless of what sort of organizational changes may be happening, those are things that are, within me and don't change. So I definitely sort of think that's super important. But in saying that, I can completely appreciate that ambition looks different for us as ethnic minorities. I don't know about any of you guys, but I've often been told that I should be like grateful to even have a seat at the table. But I think that's nonsense. And what we should really be intentional about is our growth prospects and opportunities and promotions and going for that opportunity. Because I've personally seen at Investec, colleagues who perhaps hesitate to go for an opportunity, maybe because of a hostile environment or whatever the case may be, and they sort of stay stagnant, they don't progress, they don't sort of move forward. But on the other hand, and I can speak to this as well, I've seen people take a bet on themselves and just go for that opportunity, and I've seen them thrive and do really well. So yes, I think having a skill set is very important, but I also think, don't be scared to be ambitious and don't be scared to name your ambitions out loud, because if we do that, then it just sort of makes it more difficult for organizations to try and quietly ignore what it is that you're trying to achieve and what you want to become. So, yeah.
It is all about being inquisitive and putting yourself out there. Yeah. Totally agree with you. And Robert, have you faced any unique challenges as a Black professional?
Yeah, I think my experience was definitely different. I think to draw a comparison to Fidel, I, as you may have noticed, do have quite an anglicised name, and I think I'm half Zambian. My mum's from Zambia, and for any sort of Southern Africans or Zambians that might be here, you might be able to relate to this. All my cousins, they say I've got a Mzungu name, which basically means it's a white person name. So I think in terms of maybe the confirmation biases that others might have suffered from, on paper, it wouldn't be obvious that to someone looking that I look the way I look. In terms of the impact that that's had on my career, it's very hard to say, and it's difficult to judge. But I think there have definitely been, most instances, if I'm going to a client meeting or joining a call, quite often I can be the only person there that that looks like me. But is that necessarily a challenge, or I don't think so, or I haven't felt it in that way. But I think it's something we'll come on to discuss in a little bit. I think you do obviously stand out, but is that necessarily a bad thing? I don't think so, and I think you can use that to your advantage. And exactly, stand out as an individual, which I think could be quite a powerful thing.
Agree. I was sort of just circling back to Naomi, and you recently moved internally. How do you continue to excel in this environment where we are seeing companies pull back on DE&I? I mean, not at Investec because we're doubling down on it, but how do you continue to excel?
I think for me, excelling in this context sort of comes down to maybe 3 main points. I think the first thing, and I think what I would typically do is just try and reframe what underrepresentation means to us, and rather than seeing it as perhaps an isolation, perhaps see it as an opportunity, because what I find is that when I'm in rooms where I'm one of the few, I sort of see that as my perspective being unique, and in that can be quite powerful. So I definitely sort of use that as my superpower. Like, for example, I have a lot of clients at Investec who I would say majority of them are sort of middle-aged white men. And when we were first introduced as myself being their private banker, I don't think they were expecting like a young black female. But in building a relationship and building a rapport with these clients, I think they value the different perspective that I can bring to a conversation, or a different lens that I can bring to a conversation. So that's enabled me to sort of build trust and just further build that rapport with my clients. The second thing I would definitely say is to sort of stay anchored to your values and your priorities. Because I think, organizations and politics, they change all the time and they shift all the time. But what doesn't change for me is my why and my what. So why am I doing the job I'm doing? What am I trying to achieve? What do I want my career to look like in, 3-5 years' time? So keeping that at the forefront of my mind just helps me to almost ignore some of the external noise that we get. And I think the final point for me is just to build resilience within my community, because I think when you're working in an environment where not a lot of people look like you or sound like you or come from where you come from, it's super important to have that feeling of community and belonging. So just being able to have a group of peers that will support you, encourage you, and sometimes even find opportunities for you, because I find that sometimes when one door closes within your sort of network in your community, they may already start to sort of work to open new doors for you. So yeah, I think for me it's just staying focused, trying to use my, uniqueness as a superpower, and surrounding myself around people that want to sort of encourage my ambition rather than try and shrink it.
I think we've all touched upon we heard about the importance of relationships. We talk about relationship currency at Investec. And then you just touched upon sort of community. So just focusing on mentoring and networking, that is imperative, I genuinely believe, for our career progression. Naomi, I'd like to ask if you feel this is important, and sort of what are the benefits that come from mentoring and mentorship?
So personally, I can probably speak about mentoring and having a group of peers forever, so just stop me if I'm going on for too long. But I think it's probably the most important thing, if not the most important thing, you need to equip yourself wherever you're working. I say that because, number one, that's been so true and resonated to me at Investec, but also I just think that you need people, or at least one person that's going to advocate for you in rooms where you're not present, and to also be able to give you honest feedback when you need it, because that's what you're going to need to sort of keep on going in your career. And I think you find those qualities within mentors or within peers. And if I just touch on mentors really quickly, I think they are just imperative to help you along your journey and also help you navigate the unspoken rule of a workplace, because I think it differs from businesses to businesses. There's definitely one at Investec, and these are things that are not written in a handbook. So it's good to know, or to have, I guess, a sort of finesse around where you are working and how to navigate the environment, knowing who to speak to, knowing what rooms to be in, that sort of thing. I think a mentor is really good at. I also think a mentor is amazing at being able to share their experiences, their wins, and also their pitfalls, because they would have had mess ups. Yeah, I was going to say something else. They would have had sort of differences and difficulties in their career, and they can sort of help you to win and be successful, but avoid some of the mistakes that they may have made. And when I think about mentors for myself, I think it's important to remember that mentors don't have to come from a kind of formal program or you going up to someone and formally saying, will you be my mentor? Because I have never done that, but I can say that I've probably got 5-10 mentors at Investec. And the reason for that is because I've just identified people that I think are amazing. And I've been curious and reached out to them to help me whenever I've had challenges or whenever I needed assistance or needed guidance in whatever I may be doing at work. And naturally, I think our relationship has grown to a point where we are mentor-mentee, but there's never been a sort of formal label to it. And then if I just quickly touch on peers, I think peers are just as important as a mentor, because with a peer group, you know, these are people that can resonate with you, and you can, again, share experiences, share challenges, share strategies, and these are people that will encourage you and just give you that support when you need it. And one thing that I learned about mentors really quickly is that there's no point in, I guess, finding peers within the team that you work with every day or the people that you have lunch with every day. You have to really put yourself out there and be brave and just speak to someone that you haven't met before. Because if you think about it, if you've got a group of people that perhaps you're from the same background, it's unlikely that all of your opportunities will come from that same space. So you're gonna have to take yourself out of that situation. And at Investec, we have regular sort of mingles and socials. And when I have the social battery to do so, because I think that's a whole another thing, but when my social battery allows me to, I always try and speak to someone new from a different team, because you just never know what opportunities could come from speaking to that individual. And then just finally,
this is your last point.
This is my last point. Just an example for how this has worked so well for me at Investec. Like I said, I've been there for coming up to 9 years, and obviously when I first joined the business, I had an interview. But since joining Investec in 2017 or whenever it was, I've changed roles, 4 times now. And out of those 4 roles, I've never had to sort of formally interview for the position. And the reason for that is because I've just been curious, and I've just took it upon myself to speak to the wider team that I'm interested in, speak to the team leader, speak to the stakeholders, so that they get to know me and know my personality, know what I can bring to the team, so that when you do get to that interview stage, you know, the due diligence is sort of already done. And for me, that was sort of 50% of the work already completed at that point. So yeah, I'm clearly very passionate about this. So.
I was going to say, anyone who wants to talk to Naomi about mentoring, come find her afterwards. She's clearly very, very passionate about it. Robert, are you the same way inclined?
Covered pretty much everything off there. No, I think that to reiterate what Naomi said, I think, you know, particularly on the networking point, you know, speaking personally, I think that has played, you know, probably the most pivotal role in terms of my career, my progression. Obviously, coming from where I was working in film and having that background, you know, trying to break into, you know, investment banking, which, you know, typically the barriers are quite high, and if you haven't jumped through the hoops of doing, you know, spring week internship grad scheme, it's pretty difficult to break into. You know, and I you know, candidly wouldn't be sat here today right now if it wasn't for, you know, networking. And sort of using my network. So yeah, there are a few individuals that have played a key role in helping me progress in my career. And I think, I guess in terms of, you know, practically, the key thing, I think, in terms of, you know, networking, putting yourself out there, which I think Naomi touched on, is you just have to say yes to things. And I think, you know, events like this, and other opportunities, just putting yourself out there, putting yourself out of your comfort zone to maybe go and speak to people that, you know, you wouldn't necessarily, you know, cross paths with in usual life, I think is so important. And, you know, you never know what will come of these things. And I think, yeah, one last point is it can help you in terms of, you know, opening up new career paths. But I think one thing I've noticed in terms of my role in M&A is, you know, when I look at the senior guys, your network is everything, and the people that progress the furthest in their career. You don't have to be the smartest guy in the room, or, you know all of the technicals, how to value a business. But if you have the contacts and you have the network, that's where the deals come from, and that's, you know, that's how you earn your money at the end of the day. So I think it is the most powerful tool that someone could have in their arsenal, really, in their career.
Thank you. And sort of Fidel, just sort of thinking about you're an artist, and then you've sort of come into the world of banking. So did you also leverage your network to sort of help with that transition?
Kind of, not necessarily to go like into banking, but okay. I suppose just to flip that question almost, I learned so much from going into music that I brought back into banking, which I never thought it would be that way around. I thought it would be, I'd learned loads from banking in the commercial world to take into music. One of the main things that I learned from the music industry is networking. Like you have to do it. And on your journey to networking, you're going to meet people who slam the door in your face. Ultimately, I'm not going to mention his name because people might know him, but I had an initial coffee. I just made this body of work when I was in music, and was getting really good feedback from it, and took it to an A&R. An A&R is like a music scout for those that don't know. I think it was Universal. And the first thing that I was actually connected to this guy through a friend. So I was like going into this conversation thinking, okay, I've got the good music, I've networked, I've got a guy that's about to introduce me to a music scout. I'm pretty much going to get signed to Universal today. And I walked into the conversation, and he heard the music and was like, okay, this is good. Your problem is that Universal aren't looking for a black pop artist, which is quite a crazy thing to hear. Sort of 4 months into your music career, but I think from there that was just like I just got to keep working, make more music, and I learned so much in that year of from resilience, and I suppose the resilience that you can build in and around and when you are networking. I think one of the other things, just to touch upon like mentors and networking as well, is one thing that's really stuck with me is what one of my mentors, I suppose, has said, and I've never actually acknowledged this guy as a sort of mentor, to your point earlier. But he's always said that he's an investor, manages, I think at the time he was managing about 60 billion for Coutts Bank at the time. And he always said, my philosophy when it comes to investing is being contrarian, being different, going against the grain. When everyone else is buying, you should be selling. And I've kind of just taken that, internalized that myself, and actually just applied it to wider life. If you look at the big companies, the big sort of trends and change, you look at sort of AI at the moment, it's different to anything we've seen before. It's nothing innovative, nothing better comes out of the same. So I think it's really about, for me, what I've taken from the contrarian investing is, being contrarian, us, being different, it really is a superpower. I'm trying to think if I had one more point. I think that might be it.
Are you sure?
I don't know.
Naomi's probably covered them.
Yeah. Last point, actually. I think, and Naomi, you did cover this, but over the years, I also think there's a formula to networking and to getting a mentor, that sort of stuff. And I think that formula is, this is how I've done it. So you identify the person. Once you've identified the person, you ask them a question. Or actually, before doing that, you identify multiple people, because some people might be busy, they might not come back to you. So once you've identified multiple people, you then reach out to them. You ask them for a coffee, ask them a question, whatever it might be. Some will come back, some people won't, but I think ultimately people inherently want to help. And I think if you're persistent, then people will respond to you. I think beyond that as well, once they've come back to you and given you feedback, take that on board, put it into practice. If it works, then great. If it doesn't, give them feedback. Let them know, okay, I tried this, it went really well. I tried this, it didn't go so well. I've still got challenges here. And in that process, that's where not only are you networking, but you're also getting sort of mentors, mentees, and that sort of stuff. So yeah, That's what I'd say.
I think I've had many mentors in the past, and the sort of way that I view my mentors is that they are like lighthouses. They shine a light on things that sort of I'm blind to, and really help me sort of navigate. I know what I'm good at, but also what I'm not so good at, and they're able to sort of bring that to the forefront. I also really genuinely believe that the mentee owns the relationship. So you're getting traction because you're actually taking that advice on board. You're sort of following through on it, and then you're taking it back to the mentor. And I think that really does help because it shows that you're listening. Another point, the sort of topic that I want to discuss with you guys is allyship. So in my mind, DE&I is not just about race, it's about many diverse groups, gender, neurodiversity. Robert, is showing up for your colleagues even more important today than ever before?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's not even showing up for your colleagues, but I think...
the support you can give them.
Yeah, support you can give anyone. They don't have to be your colleagues. I think people sometimes reach out to me asking for advice on how to get into M&A and investment banking. And I think, as I said, I wouldn't have been able to get in without other people making time of day for me. So I think it's something that's super important that, there's one individual in particular who really went out of his way to introduce me to the right people that got me the opportunity to interview at Investec. So when, when I see people that were in, my shoes, I think it's really important to try and, make the time. Obviously I can't give people jobs, I don't have that power, but, just making the time to give people a bit of advice, I think is really important. And I guess it's like a virtuous circle that you can keep turning over. So yeah, for sure.
I am just sort of conscious of time, so I'm going to sort of head towards the end. So Naomi, what advice would you give to anyone who may be feeling a bit discouraged today about DE&I?
I think the advice, well, I guess, first of all, I think it's good to recognise that it's completely understandable why people may feel discouraged because of the current climate. But what I would probably say is just to firstly acknowledge the reality. There are shifts happening and there are changes happening, perhaps not so much in one organisation to the other. But I personally think there's no real point in stressing or worrying about things that we can't control, but rather in terms of our focus, I think we should really just be focusing on our goals and our priorities and what we're trying to achieve, because whilst an organisation may be changing its own goals and its objectives, what doesn't change is our own career and our own development. So I would just say to keep investing in yourself, your skills, keep exploring those other opportunities and keep going for those roles and promotions, etc. And also keep building that network of mentors and peers that we've spoken about is so important today. And I guess the other thing I would probably say, and probably not so much advice, but maybe just a reminder that I don't think change comes about just from organizational programs such as like BID and DEI. I think change comes about from your community, from peer support and your own hard work. So what I would say on that is, whilst the language may be changing around DEI, just don't forget that there are still people in spaces like BYP that are still looking to support you, mentor you, encourage you. And I think the fact that we're all here today, we probably already know this. So yeah, just stay focused, keep going for those opportunities, and don't forget that the need for diversity, inclusion, equity, that's not going to go away. So yeah, just keep going.
Robert, any advice for anyone feeling a bit discouraged?
Yeah, I think he's covered most of it off there. But yeah, I think keep putting yourself out there, keep coming to events like this, and yeah, I think it's almost just be shameless. Keep following up with people, and as our host said, relationships are the most valuable currency. So I think just bear that in mind.
And Fidel, let's hear from you.
I just think that, and a very strong believer that diversity is a competitive advantage. I think that difference in thinking, you being yourself, you owning who you are, your uniqueness, that is what will make you stand out. And I think the more of that version you can bring out, the better you do. Ultimately, I think there's so many examples as well. I kind of meant to kind of mention some people that have been doing this, but I mean, you look at Lewis Hamilton's story. He didn't look like anyone else in his field. Completely different to everyone, and you look and you see what he's done, and he's someone. I think that there's a quote that he said was that being different doesn't always have to be a disadvantage. It's actually a competitive advantage, and yeah, he's just the perfect example of that. I also think that if you look at what Stormzy's doing at the moment, I mean, there are so many prominent UK artists, but for him to go and do what he's doing in terms of the scholarships in Cambridge, him allying with not just Cambridge, also HSBC, who have come in and started funding scholarships as well. You've also got Penguin, the Murky Books campaign. So these are all examples of, I think, people that have owned themselves being different, and not just that, have used their platform to bring other people through, really. And I think that's a huge thing.
Thank you to the three of you. I believe that's all that we've got time for. Oh, yeah. Let's go to questions.
Thank you. We have one question here. Have you experienced gatekeeping from a Black manager/leader, and how did you overcome this?
So can you repeat the question?
So I'll say it again. Have you experienced gatekeeping from a Black manager/leader, and how did you overcome this?
From my experience, I haven't experienced that, and that's mainly because there really isn't any Black managers. Well, in my department, there's not many Black managers that I report into, so I haven't experienced any gatekeeping from my peoples. But what I would say, if you are experiencing that, I think there's so much that one manager can do, but there's other leaders that are always in an organization. So I would always say, just keep going, and if one manager's sort of proven to be a stumbling block in your career, just speak to someone else, because that one person can't define your whole career and what you're trying to do. So just ignore that person, whoever that question was from, and go to somebody else. Yeah.
I also genuinely believe it's really important to identify your stakeholders and the people who have your back, because it's not just one person. When you're working in a big organisation, that one person doesn't have the autonomy to own your career. You own your career, and you build your network, and you identify those people, and you work with those people.
I'd also just quickly add as well that gatekeeping and being, stunted by managers is not just... It just doesn't just happen with Black people. It happens everywhere. So I just think the general advice to that is what you've just said there, and what you've just said there. It's just work around it, speak to other stakeholders, etc., and just don't let it limit you.
No.
Thank you. One more question. What does the panel see as the role of allyship in DEI in corporations? Don't know if it's allyship. Yeah. Allyship. Yeah.
In my mind, allyship is really about being genuinely having someone's back, and you give them the truth. You may not always agree with their perspective, but it's supporting them and helping them find a way. Is sort of my main thinking around it. It is, being an ally.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think it's just so important. You can also use it as a networking tool as well, allyship as well. But I also think it happens at loads of different levels. I think I spoke about Stormzy, Lewis Hamilton. We can be allies, in this room, speaking up for someone in a in a room, someone that's maybe, not as, confident, or, someone that's been marginalized, whatever it might be, there are so many opportunities to show allyship. But yeah, I think it's also important to, and this is like credit to BYP and the team here, is like there are allies not only in the rooms, but at corporate institutional level. There are banks out there that really want to support what you're doing and your initiatives. So I think ultimately what it comes down to is just being cognizant of that, but also being kind of fearless in your approach. There are allies everywhere, and you can also be an ally to people around you.
So just one thing, it takes me a little while to process these things. So another take on allyship is about having empathy, is able to be empathetic and be able to understand. So when you are an ally, having someone who understands you, your situation, your background, your history, and being able to sort of share experiences, that's also really important. Cool. I just want to say a big thank you for BYP for hosting us today. If anybody does have any questions on Investec's initiatives, policies, please come and find us. We're outside. You've got all of our zebras on the table. So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Was that informative?